Hey guys, welcome back to more AFK Arena. In today's video, I wanted to discuss the factions and what I believe to be the best faction to go for, specifically early through mid game. Once you get towards late end game, obviously you're going to chop and choose. You've got select summons. Everything becomes a lot easier. You've got a stable team. But I'm looking at the best faction to invest in and target in the early to mid game to get the most optimal progression. So let's get into it. Okay, so we'll kick it off with the Lightbearers. Now, the Lightbearers probably 6 to 12 months ago used to be everyone's go-to choice. You start a new account, every faction scroll would go to Lightbearers. They were just so strong. They had the Lucius, the Rowan. Like, this was probably more than a year ago as well. Like, the Belinda Forks comp was a thing. You've got the Rosaline. They were just really strong, and there was a real, like, just Lightbearer meta going on, and that has definitely been crushed. They're still not bad. You do have things like Gwyneth, but Gwyneth doesn't get effective until level 221, so not really worth that early game investment. The only thing you're really targeting is Rowan, but even just an elite Rowan is going to do fine. If you can get those 4 copies, it does help you because you get his signature item unlocked. But just getting a copy of Rowan just through summons, luckily, hopefully you can get it from having on the wish list and normal summons, is all you really need. Lucius is definitely a luxury, so I'd still recommend for newer players who aren't used to the game, put Lucius on the wish list. He is an amazing early game tank. But besides that, your options are sort of limited for progression. We do have Belinda, however, Belinda does drop off in the later game, in the end game. Even Gwyneth starting to see less usage in the end game as well. So they really lack that core option that's really going to stabilize you. The only one, like I said, that's really going to have long-lasting effects is going to be that Rowan at this stage. Gwyneth obviously still having some use. Same with the Rosaline as well. Obviously, Rain and Estrelda do see some use as well. And there's other niche situations. You've got something like Cecilia who does get used. But as a core unit, Rowan's the only one. So for me, in my order of how I would prioritize, I think they fall about third in line for the priority. For me, I would never, on an account that I'm trying to play more optimal, I would never go for Lightbearers first. I know there are some people that say, you know, why not go Lightbearers till you get a Mythic Rowan and then switch. I just think it's too late. You've put too much investment. You've lost out on your main DPS carry. You could use that Belinda till that stage, but I'm not a huge fan. So that is Lightbearers. They fall into rank 3 for worthwhile investment. Then Maulers. Now, Maulers come in last for me. Maulers do keep getting better. However, for the Mauler team to work, they don't... Like, something like Antandra is really good in the first few chapters. If you pull a random copy, she's going to carry you pretty hard for like the first 6 to 7 chapters. But besides that, they don't have anything core to them that's going to be able to just carry you all the way. A Brutus is nice. Screg becomes a really key point in the late game due to his furniture and the way he synergizes with the rest of the Maulers. Titus can be a good early game carry, but due to the fact that they don't have that set unit or 2 or 3 units that are just absolutely godly throughout the whole game, means that they don't really land anywhere. I feel like Maulers, they've been getting buffs, they've been getting new characters. I feel like they're a few changes away from creeping up that list and maybe even overtaking Lightbearers, although we are well overdue on a new Lightbearer character. But Maulers, I wouldn't go with them for your faction scrolls unless you're doing a specific faction push with Maulers on a specific alt account for the fun of it. The investment isn't really worth it. You can swap to Maulers later on once you've got your main teams established and start working on some of those niche teams. But besides that, Maulers sort of get left out. Jumping into Wilders. Now, Wilders and Graveborn is a big debate at the moment, and I feel like, honestly, you could do either one. You can get a very strong account going your faction scrolls and faction cards for either one of these 2 factions. Me, personally, I prefer the Graveborn option. But we're going to talk about Wilders first. But like I said, Wilders or Graveborn, the 2 key factions that you can look at. You're not going to be massively let down if you go Graveborn or Wilder over one of the other 2. I just think Graveborn has it just over Wilders. But let's take a look at Wilders and why they're so good. So we've got 2 carry options that you can pick up that are going to be fantastic units throughout the whole game. That is Iron and Saurus. So if you pick up enough copies of either of them, you're going to have them both on the wish list, meaning it just doubles your chances of getting a really solid carry, which is really nice. Now, Cyrus, obviously, you want to get him to Mythic as soon as possible, get his signature item to 30, because that's when he's really going to get functional. But he can still work in those early stages. But Iron's going to be really strong as well in that early stage. Then you've got the fantastic support of the Leica and Tassie, which are no-brainers for the wish list. Then you've got the options of Pippa or Namora normally that are going to be the last one on your wish list. Namora giving some sustain, but once again, you don't have to use full Wilder faction in your progression. If you pull that one copy of Rowan, you put Rowan in with the other Wilders and you're pretty good. So if you end up with a core team of either Saurus or Iron, along with Tassie and Leica, in the very early game, you can even use Arden, who is very strong. Then you mix up a couple things. Maybe if you got a Lucius and a Rowan, you could throw them in, or just a Rowan and even like a Brutus for a tank. Anything is an option you can put in with them. They've just got such a good support plus carry core that just makes them worthwhile investment. And the thing about the Wilders is that Leica, Tassie, Iron, Saurus, they're amazing throughout the whole game, so there's no wasted investment in them. So that's Wilders, but once again, I do put them at number 2 on the faction list. Number 1 being Graveborn. Now, Graveborn used to be like the only thing you used to look at in Graveborn was Chimera. Chimera used to be everything about Graveborn. Everyone go get your Chimera carry from the Labyrinth, all good. Now with the Labyrinth, all the Labyrinth coins on most free-to-play players being saved up for Dimensionals, Chimera's just dropped off the list completely. She becomes trash in the end game, except for the one Namora boss in the Twisted Realm. She becomes effectively nothing. So even though she was a good value investment in the early game just to get her ascended to carry, not so much needed anymore because we do have better options as well. So in the Graveborn, main carry option we're looking at is going to be Daemon. Absolutely fantastic. Now, the cool thing about Daemon is because his damage scales on the enemy's stats, like the damage from the Blood Shield is based on their max HP, he's doing good damage even if he's at low ascension. So even like on one of my alt accounts where I've got him sitting at Legendary, I've got a Mythic Isolde, Daemon's still doing all the damage because he's just sitting in the back row so he doesn't take damage, but he's dealing a truckload. However, if you do get the copies and you do get to ascend him, he can sit in the front row and tank it out as well. Just the, honestly, in my opinion, probably the best early mid, like just the best carry to like carry you through the whole game, in my opinion, because he's always going to scale so well. And once again, if he's not ascended properly, you can just put him behind something, let him survive, and then ramp up that damage. It's not bad at all. Then we have Isolde. Now, Isolde is a very viable carry in the early game. I think I'm on chapter 14. He is my carry with the Daemon behind him. Daemon doing the most of the damage, but Isolde sort of carrying the team, keeping it stable. Just so much survivability and also a decent amount of damage. In that early game, he's okay. He can survive pretty well and do nice damage. However, once you do get him ascended, chucks 3 furniture on him, then he starts ramping up that damage. Also, once you get his signature item going, he becomes even better. So Isolde just a really nice investment and a good one to pull alongside Daemon. Then on top of that, we have Silas, who is, in my opinion, actually better than Rowan in the early game as a healer. His gas clouds that float around the field, they just heal for so much, and even if he dies, they still hang around and heal. Even just an elite or elite plus Silas can do an intense amount of healing to your tanks like an Isolde and a Daemon. It's not even funny. So those 3 as a core, in my opinion, Silas, Isolde, and Daemon are like the best core. Like the wilder core of Tassie, Leica, and Iron or Saurus is very strong, but for early to mid game progression, even through into being useful in the late game, those 3 are absolutely fantastic. And then the cool thing with Graveborn is when you do cards, there's a lot of options in the Graveborn that aren't a waste. Like I said, Chimera, even if you do get it from cards slowly, she is going to have that Twisted Realm boss function. We got Grizzul, who's not very good in campaign or in PvP or anything like that, but he is amazing in boss fights. You got Thorin, who becomes very valuable for the cheese later on. We got Nara, who's absolutely fantastic as a tech choice in your team. Not a staple, more of a tech. We have Pharrell, who's good everywhere. So Pharrell's the other one that I would always put on the wish list with those 3. And then the last slot, I normally choose between Thorin, Nara, and Odin. And then obviously we have Odin, who's like, Odin is fantastic in the early game and starting to see more play in the late game. So I'm keen to see where the meta sort of places him as things develop. You've really only got a few bad options in Torn, and I know people will say you can use these characters somewhere, but the ones that I really don't like pulling are Torn, the creepy hand lady Theowen, Baden, and Keltha. So those are the ones, and also Isabella isn't the greatest. So those are the ones I try to avoid. They do have niche uses, but they're not too great. But there's just so many solid Graveborn picks in there. And like I said, that core team is absolutely fantastic. So if you are starting a fresh account, my recommendation would be, my personal choice is Graveborn, but Graveborn or Wilders as the main faction you aim to. They just have the best early on support and damage that carries through into the end game, and the best investment. Don't let that deter you. If you just want to make a specific account because you like the Light Bearers or you like the Maulers, go nuts. It's a game all about fun. But for me, I definitely think Wilders and Graveborn are the top, with Graveborn just having the wood over Wilders. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think. Who is your best faction for that carrying through the entire game? Like I said, when you get to end game, you're chopping and changing, doesn't really matter. You got that many select summons, all that good stuff. That is pretty cool. But that is going to be it for this one. Thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing the next one. Cheers.